week 6, getting back to work or going back to work. We'll get started in a couple minutes. It's a little early, about a minute early. Excited to be back and having this conversation. Got some good articles. I want to thank Mandy on the team for helping find some of these, most of them, if I'm being honest. But great articles, and appreciate the work that Mandy does. So thank you. All right, well, 3 o'clock, so we'll kick it off. So again, name is Leo Dess with Group 337, Inside Access Control, and inside a bunch of the inside, we have the different parts and pieces of the business. But this is the Getting Back to Work live YouTube that we do every single week. It's in combination with OpenPath, who we're extremely thrilled to be sponsors of this initiative that we have. So thank you to them for that. What we do every single week is we come together to have a conversation about some articles that are in the space that meet sort of the access control and getting back to work market together. And we try to break down some stories that could help either guide or give some feedback or create a conversation. So excited about that. And then the next day, which is always Friday, we do a newsletter that goes out where we not only highlight these, but also bring in some new information. So appreciate everyone who's coming to this. When you get a chance, if you want to say something or ask a question or disagree or agree, please post it in the say something text on the right. So appreciate that very much. So, all right, we'll kick it off. So this week, 3 stories. First one is a study that was done, and that the Morning Brew, for those of you that don't read it, fantastic, highly recommend it. Neil Freeman highlighted a study that was done that says people work longer, send more emails while working from home during the pandemic. I didn't necessarily need a study to tell me that, but I think for those of you that are doing it, you probably see that too. But what was interesting was it was actually research done by Harvard in New York. And it showed, what I liked about this was some statistics. It showed that the workday increased by 48.5 minutes, as did the number of meetings that were up 13%, and the number of emails sent to colleagues was up 1.4%. So not surprising, all that's increased. I know I'm seeing it. I know a lot of people I talk to, you're also seeing the days go long, and you're seeing meetings go longer. What's interesting, though, is that the meetings, though, have become much shorter. So the overall actual time that we're spending is actually less than meetings, even though you have more meetings that have happened, which I've thought to be interesting. So why I think that's important and interesting parts of how this impacts in the access control side is some of these habits are going to stick around that we see going from work to home as when we can start going back to the office, and you start to see this sort of collaborative spaces be increased. So do meetings shift and times that are spent in meetings and the rest of it? I do think that all sticks, and I do think there's some positives to the amount of time that we spend in meetings and the amount of time that how quickly we have our meetings and conversations. So I think that's interesting. Last one on it said the researcher said that the changes in communication patterns have also changed. So workers seem to be anticipating. So this is interesting. Sorry, I'll take a step back. What he was actually saying was that the changes in the communication, the way people were working, actually happened a week before everyone started working at home. So it tells you that the people that were working at the companies were anticipating this change and actually got a head start on it than the organizations did, which made me think about, are we communicating and getting the information properly out of the people in the organizations? Is there a way to understand the data to start to see that, to anticipate stuff that happens? So I found that to be interesting because it's a data point that people weren't doing before. So great study from Harvard and New York, NYU, from the Morning Brew. Take a look at it. We'll have it in the links in the file here when it's done, and you can take a look at it. So moving on to the next one. This one I really liked. It's a longer one. I highly recommend that you taking the time to read it, though. So if you look at it's called The Future of the Office. It was done by CBRE. They surveyed 126 senior level global real estate executives to determine how the COVID-19 pandemic would change the location, design, and the use of the office. Fascinating study. It basically is the first of many that they said they're going to come out here, but it'll help occupiers and investors, they said, and then us, I believe, that are practitioners in the space, identify the evolving workplace trends and sentiment towards the office. pretty neat. Key findings, again, like I said, it was long, but I pulled out the key findings that they had summarized. Number one, more flexible work is expected. We've talked about this over the weeks, not surprised. In this, it said 70% of the respondents indicated that some portion of their workforce will be allowed to work remotely full-time. That's a high number. And that 61% of the respondents indicated that all employees would be allowed to work outside of the office at least part-time. So 70 to 60% are saying this thing is sticking and it's going to be the way that it works. I think the whole idea, though, that the office is dead, not true. You're just going to see work be a lot different. So if you think that 70 to 60% of respondents are actually going to be working from home and going into the office and doing things like that, how our systems work to support that. I think identity is important. I think levels of assurance, flexibility in the systems. I think cloud-based systems are going to be ever more important. And it's just something to consider and to think about. The other thing they talked about is that the physical office will remain important. So yeah, everybody is working from home, and I agree, Mug. Fitness that is the new normal. But if you think of 41% said that the importance of the physical office will decrease only slightly, and 38% said it will remain as important, if not more. So the physical space is still going to be important. It's just going to be different, is what they're basically saying. And it's going to have to work with the work from home side, long and short. So not anything surprising on that end. Just I think we need to debunk the idea that because Google and everybody else or whomever is saying that people aren't going to work at the office anymore, that they're not. I can tell you, I need to get out of the office, and I would be looking for collaborative space to do it. For those of you that haven't been working in an office and have been isolated like I have, the short amount of times I've been able to go out and actually be interacting with people in an office environment since the pandemic, it's actually nice. It's awkward right now, but the ability to get out. So I would imagine people are going to want that connection. So the next one was the cyclical portfolio adjustments that are under pursuit. So what does that mean? More than 60% of the respondents are pursuing lease renewals, and more than half have relocation plans on hold. So think about that. 60% of people are looking to pursue lease renewals, right? More than 85% are optimizing their portfolio, and more than 75% have expansion plans on hold or canceled. So it tells you people are maybe not changing where they're going to be doing their office plans, but they actually are really taking a hard look at how they're going to shift those to work better with this idea that 70% of people are going to be working remote, spaces become collaborative, they're going to keep them. How do they do that? What's interesting on that end is, if you think about it, if these office spaces are now going to have to be collaborative spaces, how do you do that in a safe way with some of the new norms that we have to have in health? I haven't thought through all of them, but it's an interesting thing where if you need a collaborative space, how do you do that and do it safely? How do you get maybe, co-working type, co-living type spaces, if you would, as a normal part of an office, which you didn't necessarily do before? It's interesting to think about. Next one, long-term strategies are under consideration. So it said 70% are confident in setting long-term real estate strategies, even amid the pandemic. So it tells you people are planning now. What I liked about that was, if you're calling on these people, I wouldn't wait. I would start to try to have conversations and understand what their long-term plans are. It went on to say that fewer than 1 in 10 companies are considering leaving high-density urban cores. Interesting. 1/4 are exploring suburban satellite strategies. I had a kind of a feeling you've been hearing a little bit about this suburbanization, if you would, of how people are living. And 1/4 are exploring, 73% of respondents are expecting flexible office space will play some role in the future strategy. That's a large amount of people. So again, going back, long-term strategies, they're thinking through flexible spaces, satellite locations. It's all going to put pressure on the need for access control systems, visitor management systems, everything that our systems need to be able to do. Wonderful for multi-tenant, wonderful for cloud-based, wonderful for mobile, all the good stuff that we thought was going to happen just actively accelerated. And the last one that they had in the study, the workplace is quickly changing. It's the no-brainer sort of statement of the day. But it said most respondents indicated that the workplace transformation is still trending away from dedicated private spaces and towards shared collaborative spaces. So back to what we talked about before, how do you do this where you want to have critical efficiencies, but you want to stay safe? I don't have the answers on that. I think there's ways, and you see people doing with density. You see things that people do with having windows open. A lot of ways I think are going to go. I do think there's a rush right now of introducing technology in a lot of ways is not necessarily going to be the thing that is the answer, but for right now, people are trying to figure it out. So things like fever detection, for instance. Not convinced that that's a long-term plan, but it seems to be working for giving people a sense of safety. So I would say be flexible and open also. If you're selling into the space, I would come with ideas and start to create a narrative around that. If you are someone that is buying this stuff, I would recommend that you have somebody internally that is an expert to help take you through this process. So that, again, that's the future of the office. Huge study from CBRE. Highly recommend that you read it. It's a thick piece, but a lot of great information. Lastly, last article. The work from home shift shocked companies. Now they're trying to learn what the lessons are. So this is by Chris Mims. He looked at great writer actually for Wall Street Journal. Fantastic person to actually follow on Twitter. Highly recommend that you do. So he took a look at what are the learnings that people got from what's happened and what they're currently doing now. He had about 6 or 7 bullet points on that. Some things to understand. He reminded everyone that this is unprecedented. So, like, it's an obvious statement, but I think it's important for us to take a look. I do see a shift right now in the approach that people where it does feel like some are starting to take a breath. So this idea of this rush that happened, there's a need to take a step back now, I think, and now that we have a little bit of better understanding of what we're dealing with. But keep in mind, this is unprecedented. So you need to take the same approach. He highly recommended that companies need to experiment. They need to take a look at doing some new things. And here were some lessons and some ideas that they had. Number one, use the tech that you have and use SaaS tools. It was interesting inside the article, they talked about that the sales of computers in so many regards was still up on the residential side, but companies were not buying as much. So no matter how much individuals are buying, it was never going to meet the amount of computers that were needed to fill the gap for what companies did before. But what companies are starting to do is they're starting to buy SaaS tools. So you're not necessarily seeing a big rush, although you did see like cameras and stuff like that. And it was talking about more like on the computer side. You're not seeing people do a huge rush into purchasing those things on a company base. They're saying use the tools that you have. We're going to put some SaaS tools on top to make you more effective. Cost savings, a lot of reasons why people do it, which we talked about before. Next one was people crave contact. We talked a bit about this. There's some tools that are early in doing this. So there were some that they talked about on ways to get more collaborative contact. Things like screens that you have always on, that you can have sort of drop-in moments of collision, like at a water cooler in an office. A lot of people that are playing with that type of stuff, but way too early right now on that. But what they are talking about is the need to over communicate. So in the meaning that you don't have that sort of contact as you walk by somebody. So now go out of your way to communicate. Workday is changing, of course. Some statistics around that was interesting that I thought that I didn't think about before, but then when I saw it in numbers was interesting. Chats on the weekends are up by 200%. So companies like Slack, and he highlights Facebook for Work, they're seeing 200% increase on chats on the weekends, which I don't know if that's healthy or not, but it is what's happening. And then they also saw a change in meetings, so early meetings and late meetings where you didn't necessarily see that many done before. So think about how does that impact the way that these buildings work. So if we do have collaborative spaces, are people going to change the habits? Like I know, like with mine, with having 2 kids that are now going to be working from the house, doing their work, I might go into the office at 5 o'clock in the morning to have a meeting so that I can be home at 8 o'clock when they wake up to help them with school. Never had to worry about that before, but now we're going to have to start doing that. So how does the space work, and what do you do with it? Other thing that talked about was taking in new perks. Those are needed. So again, we talked about this last week, and I think the week before. We're really understanding what those perks are and how they work. So whether it's gift cards, they talked about people shipping stuff to their house. There's companies now that are just focusing on this alone of how to get engagement. They talk about some companies wanting to get Pelotons for everyone that works for them. So some people are going out of control. Some, I think, you'll find your norm. And last but not least was the reminder that since it is unprecedented, the fact that we need to take it slow. And I think in our industry, especially in the access control, I do think we need to have a good conversation of steadiness, but measured steadiness, and to remember to do that. So those are the 3 stories. This last one was the work from home shift shocked companies now. They are learning its lessons by Chris Mims, Wall Street Journal. We'll get that in the notes. The one before that was The Future of the Office by CBRE. And lastly was a study about how people are working longer in emails because of the pandemic. A little bit of a theme through these on the way people are working and the changes that they do it. We'll get these out. We'll put them in the show files. Again, every week we do this. Thursdays, 3 o'clock Eastern, noon Pacific, late UK. And we'll continue to do it. So sign up, please, if you would. We'll put it in how you can sign up for the newsletter that comes out tomorrow. And please engage online, shoot me an email, text me, whatever you'd like to do. Thank you, and stay safe.